Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our council meeting this evening. This meeting is open to the public and is available through online platform. Please subscribe to the Township of Wilmot YouTube channel to watch the live stream or view after the meeting. So I want to thank you for joining us. Waterloo Region has moved into stage 2 today. Our vaccine numbers are increasing. I encourage everyone to remain mindful of staying the course and following the provincial guidelines. And if you haven't had your second dose, please consider getting it as soon as you can. They are certainly making it a lot easier for people to get there. So they've been very successful programs all week and all weekend. So thank you for those who have done so. I'll ask Councillor Fisher to read the land acknowledgement, please.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. We have gathered in Wilmot Township on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Mississauga peoples. We also want to acknowledge the importance of the Dish with One Spoon Covenant, a peace agreement made between Indigenous nations before the Europeans arrived. It characterizes our collective responsibility to each other and Mother Earth. We should take only what we need, leave enough for others, and keep the dish clean. By acknowledging this covenant and the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, we are reminded of our important connection to this land where we live, learn, and work together as a community.
Thank you. Any additions to the agenda? So we do have one item, 5.1. Recommendation is that item 4.4 be added to the agenda under consent as report PW 2021-015 Guide Rail Program Award of Contract. That is moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Gordick. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none. So we have the minutes of the previous meeting. Staff have advised an amendment to the minutes to include the written statement from Councillor Hallman for the July 5th, 2021 special council meeting to be attached as an appendix if approved. They would be carried as amended. So the recommendation that the minutes of the following meetings be adopted as presented: regular meeting, council meeting, June 28, 2021, and special council meeting, July 5th, 2021, as amended. That is moved by Councillor Hallman and Councillor Gordick. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So we have no public meetings this evening, but we do have presentation. So I see Mr. Okrafka, you are going to introduce, I take it.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. Very briefly, there's a summary report as part of the agenda. I would point out to Councillor Gordick that we did make an effort to include the sustainability action goals, so we're happy with that. The project, as you can see, really is a substantive project in terms of addressing many of those 17 goals. I think there's 10 that we've listed there, and I'm sure that there's probably others that could apply. Without going through the report, it highlights the next steps in the project, And at this point, I'd like to, on behalf of Sandy and Patrick, introduce Phil Holst. We're all very excited with the progress that this project has been made and recent efforts in the last week, even connecting with Kitchener-Wilmot Hydro, who have agreed to participate. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Phil Holst.
Thank you, Harold. Mayor Armstrong, councillors, staff, and guests. It's my pleasure to report to you that this project, as Harold is saying, is moving forward. I expect to have a permit from Grand River Conservation Authority on or about August the 9th. That was the message that I received from the permit officer. And I think, yes, this is a project that is really exciting in the sense of, as I said last time, you have a blank slate on quite a large piece of land to reintroduce so many forms of habitats that have been there in the past and maybe add some that might not have been, all being natural and appropriate for the area. We have committed and confirmed with our operator to start site prep for the pollinative planting that will be occurring throughout the summer. Site prep, as I said, throughout the summer with seeding in October. So approximately 30 acres of the 55-acre site by the end of this fall should be seeded down to a permanent variety of pollinative in the higher areas, which is quite good for butterflies, bees, insects of various kinds. And then in the lower sections of the floodplain to plant what is known as a wet meadow, which is attractive to other forms of the same things, and also provides tremendous cover for birds, wildlife, and a variety of reptiles and amphibians, etc. So we're really excited about having this pollinative and grassland portion confirmed. Part of the 30 acres will be a type of grass planted amongst the trees that we had planted this spring. There were 4,200 seedlings planted by Grand River Conservation Authority. And thankfully, they're largely doing very well on the site. A few have died, but that's quite normal. We tend to plant them a little in excess just to accommodate losses. And even the areas where some of the trees are planted a little bit on the close side, the plan is in maybe the second or third year to transplant a few of them to different spots on the site. WG Moore Excavation has agreed to do the excavating work, and they are ready to start whenever we're ready. They recognize that we'd like to do this excavation during the month of August and September to take advantage of all of the basically dry weather, which you're not getting right now, but I expect we probably will later in the summer, and have this excavation work largely done before we get our fall rains. And it will also give us a chance to do some of the work to prepare for putting in a boardwalk throughout later in the year. I'm still looking, once we get our permit and everything's in place, to invite some of the local volunteer environment groups and other groups who might be interested in joining in doing tree planting, being on site to do tours of different kinds so I can explain to them what's being done on the site and how it relates to the watershed and any other questions that they might have. And otherwise, I think, as Harold said, one of the ideas that I'd suggested was to install a great blue heron rookery, which is something that lasts for a few years in the natural state in an area where great blue herons find a swamp area, largely cedar trees, but they are generally not going to last that long. So this would be a donation from Wilmot, Kitchener-Waterloo Hydro, excuse me, of a number of cedar poles that we could use to install different nesting platforms on them. What I'm really trying to say is that along with that, we'd like to install a number of different types of habitats, such as turtle nesting mounds throughout the area, snake hibernaculum, where it's appropriate, and a variety of other types of, say, bird houses that are really high quality built and installed in appropriate places to increase the amount of tree swallows, chickadees, bluebirds, et cetera. And so it's a very diverse and I think basically well thought out project, having worked with your Wilmot staff and with Mike Scout and our staff at Ducks Unlimited, and you folks as well. Getting your input at council is imperative, and really appreciate the chance to make this presentation and keep you informed. And look forward to the next time we speak that you'll see even more happening on your site. So if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Phil. Appreciate that. Sounds exciting. We do have some questions. Start.
Councillor Fisher.
Councillor Fenning first.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, this is probably, one of my favorite presentations. Where do I sign up, and when can I sign up to help plant trees?
Well, that will be decided later on in the summer once we have our permit, and how you folks would like us to advise the public and in what form to do that. So I'm making a list as we go. So definitely look forward to seeing you on site.
Thank you. Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. This is quite a unique project, and thanks to all the work from the staff, Harold and Phil,
Yes.
you and Mike Scout. How unique is this to Ontario? Do you know of any other spot? Like I know you mentioned in your presentation there about Woodstock sites, but
Yes.
and secondly, you also pointed out in the map deep water. What would be considered deep water? Like what depth?
Well, first of all, I do believe this is a very unique site. It's not often that you have this large of an area adjacent to a thriving community that, in a sense, doesn't really make sense to farm anymore, because it's difficult for a farmer to get such large equipment through a subdivision and operate on a floodplain that oftentimes the crops get flooded out, et cetera. And the scale of this project and the diversity of it is also very unique, in that not often do you get a location like this that offers the opportunity to add all the different varieties of tree planting, wetlands, trails, boardwalk, all the different things that we've been mentioning. And having a leadership group like you folks who are willing to go beyond the status quo and take a chance on something like this. So that's very unique. But I do think it's quite common that the interest is there all over the place. I think your project really will provide a great incentive and inspiration to other communities to do the same thing or similar. And I've noticed up in Elmira that they're actually working on a similar type of project, that this whole idea of taking land that is floodplain and otherwise you can't build on it, et cetera, and turning it back into something that it might have been to some degree in the past. And in answer to your second question, Councillor Fisher, deep would mean 2 meters at the most. That's the depth that we tend to create our wetlands. The idea is to make sure that there's deep enough sections of water so that turtles can hibernate in water that doesn't freeze, and that during drought periods, when there isn't quite as much water flowing into the system and the wetlands tend to go down, that there's still deep water sections for invertebrates and amphibians to survive until the next rainfall or next flow of water. So that's what deep water means.
Councillor Gordick.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Hi, Phil. Thank you for the presentation. I'm really excited about this too, even though I'm not, everybody knows me, I'm not really a trail person, but it's kind of exciting to see it come to fruition. Just I have a quick question. So you mentioned about the blue herons. I'm looking at the map, so just curious as to where that might be, just for interest's sake, for maybe the people in the audience. And the second part, maybe the second question I have is, again, just because of the map, how do people get to the parking? Because I don't see an actual roadway. It kind of looks like it's surrounded by water. So I'm just curious as to the access to the parking because of where it's located on the map, just more for clarification for people that
Sure.
might be watching on YouTube. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Gordick. Yes, in answer to your first question, there are two locations that I think would be possible, and they are both at the river edge of the map or the design that I've shown you. One would be on the upstream corner. I guess that would be the northwest corner, and the other one would be closer to the railway tracks. And there's a grove of trees and a wet area that will become a wetland. So one of those two spots that there's already tall trees as some cover, so that when the 4 cedar poles get installed, we're going to design them so they don't look like poles with we're trying to make them look less man-made and more natural. So the two corners at the bottom of the design down by the river. And then in answer to your question about the parking lot, the entrance will be off of Smith's Creek Drive, where there's a gate that gives access where the farmer would have in the past come in to do his cropping, and where Sandy's staff come in to do work and maintenance. And the path will follow kind of in a direction to the left as you went, you'll enter the site, and then the path goes to the left into the field and curves to the right into the parking lot. And just for the sake of your viewers, Mike Scout, myself, Harold, Sandy, and everybody else that we've been working on, been mindful to make sure that a parking lot and busyness doesn't occur right adjacent to somebody's house, that there's plenty of space on this site, and it's a very non-obtrusive area to put a parking lot, which will have tall grass prairie around it. And tall grass prairie generally gets 3, 4 to sometimes 6 feet in height. So the parking lot should blend in very nicely.
Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, there might be a bit of a lag, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say thank Phil personally for his presentation tonight, and just for his enthusiasm. He just makes me smile ear to ear when I listen to him talk about this property, and it's almost as good as how we smile when he talks about the property, because Mr. Okrafka, sorry, Harold, he's very excited about this project, and we are really proud of this effort. And it would not be possible without Mr. Scout and his generous donation to this property. It's been sitting idle for a long time, just waiting for this incredible opportunity. And Phil, your vision is greatly appreciated. And the township is really, really pleased to be working with you and Mr. Scout on this. So thank you.
Welcome. Thank you.
I want to echo that for sure. Councillor Gordick?
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Just a little bit of a follow-up, but this is either directed more to Mr. Mullenhouse or Mr. Okrafka, just to follow up on Mr. Holtz with regards to pollinating. Is that something that going forward within the township that we can look towards to bring more of that, so that we're maybe perhaps not doing as much grass cutting throughout our township in areas where it's allowable? Just kind of following up on the grassland part of that to see what we can do within the township. And it might not be the right time, but just sort of putting it out there as a question.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Jackson?
Thank you for that comment, Councillor Gordick. We can definitely take a look at all our properties to see where we're cutting and see if there are some areas that we have some naturalization happening, but we can certainly take a look and see if there are other areas that we can promote this type of natural, biodiversity. It's really important to the whole ecosystem. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I'll put that in the task of my park staff, and we'll take a look at that. We might even drag Mr. Holtz around the community and see where he would suggest it might be a good place to do that.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Did you wish to add anything, Mr. Mullenhouse?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Yeah, I'm just, supporting what interim CEO Ms. Jackson just had outlined. Certainly there's a great opportunity, I think, on we'll say private property, or at least in some of our parks lands. It is more difficult, certainly within the road allowance, to to support some of the, we'll say, the general growth aspect. We do, in general, we do cut grass as limited as we can, but and we only do so just to maintain things like sight lines and site safety type of things. So we're trying to limit our grass cutting enterprise where we can, but sometimes it is not entirely feasible.
Thank you. No, it's a good project, and thank you for bringing that forward, Councillor Gordick, to push us to do a little bit more. The birds and the bugs and the bees will all love us that much more. And they will reward us sweetly. Okay, we have a recommendation that report DS 2021-24 be received for information. That is moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Hallman. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next, we have the consent agenda. Are there any items on the consent agenda that you want pulled for discussion? Seeing none. So the recommendation that report numbers ILS 2021-28, ILS 2021-27, ILS 2021-29, and PW 2021-15B approved. That is moved by Councillor Gerber, second by Councillor Fisher. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So the next item is the proposed procedural bylaw. Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong. So procedural bylaw to some may not be quite as exciting as a wetland preserve. However, we in Information Legislative Services think it's pretty neat because it is through the procedural bylaw that you are allowed to pass bylaws and whatnot to allow for such developments. So that's my little way of feeling a part of that. So, but I am pleased to present to Council this evening the proposed procedural bylaw. The report outlines the extensive changes that are being proposed for the document. Top of mind as the final document was being prepared were the general principles of parliamentary law, which focus on the rights of members, which are council and committee members, proper decorum and respect for all participants, and the democratic rights of the public in being able to address council. The proposed document is a balance of all those rights and responsibilities. At the public meeting on June 14th, 2021, the changes to the sections pertaining to delegations and presentations were highlighted. I have prepared a slide deck that I would, little slide deck that I'd like to share with everyone here. There we go. There. Slideshow. Come on. And there we go. Okay. There. So as you can see, I've included the definitions for presentation and delegation. Just to differentiate between the two. Some people were having difficulty in understanding when it's a presentation, when is a delegation. The new, the proposed procedural bylaw clearly defines both of them. And then here, I've noted the key dates or times that are significant for the two groups. Presentations have one deadline of 5 days in advance, though they can be included as a report under separate cover if time sensitive. This is for audio or visual presentations, as well as any written submissions. that they may be including as part of their presentation. For delegations, they have 3 stages for their submissions. If a delegation has prior knowledge of a report, either due to a public notice, as is the case with public meetings for, say, the Planning Act or Drainage Act, or instances where staff might be working with members of the public on a specific matter, they would be able to meet the 5 business days prior deadline. And then their materials would be circulated as part of the agenda package. Where a delegation is registering for a report they didn't have prior knowledge of, they have until 1 business day in advance of the meeting to provide audio or visual materials that will be shown at the council meeting. If received after that time, it will still be circulated to council and the public, provided it is received at least 4 hours before the meeting. Regardless, all audio, visual, and written materials received in conjunction with the delegation will be circulated and included as part of the public record. Stop sharing. There we go. A version of the slides will be posted on the website if the new bylaw is approved. With the change in time allotted to each delegation being proposed, delegations may need to think slightly different about what is said in their 5 minutes and consider providing a deep dive or detailed data in a written document, provided in sufficient time for council to give it proper consideration. By providing the heavier components of a delegation in advance, it gives council an opportunity to consult, evaluate, research, and contemplate the delegation's point of view as part of their decision-making process. Other amendments to the bylaw of note were the overall cleanup to remove redundancies, enhancing clarity, implementing the solicitor's suggestions for referencing source legislation, and the addition of several definitions. Additions have been recommended in the proposed bylaw regarding confidentiality of closed meeting discussions, adopting the agenda, video recordings retention, non-material edits and reporting of same for resolutions or bylaws, and speaking order and time limits for council members. This document will again be reviewed with the new term of council. As the community and legislative environments evolve, so too must the township's governance documents, including this bylaw. Staff will continue to monitor the application of this bylaw for review in 2023. Following this meeting, staff will be updating various pages on the township website to ensure this information is not just provided, but also easily understandable language focused in on given topics such as delegations, presentations, written submissions, petitions, correspondence, integrity commissioner reports. Thank you, and I welcome any questions from council.
Are there any questions? Councillor Gordick.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Armstrong, to Ms. Middleholtz. Thank you very much for all your hard work. I know this has been a long process, and appreciate all of the changes and the amendments, and listening to the people that have emailed you in and called you, especially with regards to the 5-minute presentation. I know that it's a big change, and I appreciate that. I do want to say that I understand both sides of the discussion, but I believe that part of what we went through last week with regards to the Prime Minister's path shows that our delegations, if given appropriate time lengths and consideration, can do a 5-minute presentation, and perhaps they can rely on, like you said, being more succinct in how they want to do the presentations, and at least sending us and or staff more detailed questions and responses to those kind of things. So I understand, and it will help us to clean up our business at hand of our meeting. However, I do want just one little comment, and I forgot to write down the number, so my apologies, Ms. Middleholtz. But with regards to the order of councillors being recognized for speaking, I think it's 8.1 Yeah, I can't remember. I'm
8.12, I
sorry.
think.
I think 812. I think the wording of that for me should be that in order of hand raised, not in order of ward. I believe that, especially if it has to do, as I mentioned previously, with one of the other things, if there's someone that's speaking with regards to a motion, you know, it should be the person that raised the motion that has maybe perhaps the first right to refusal, so to speak, versus order of. I think that, and we as council, I think, have honored that ourselves when we've seen that someone's put their hand up. So just wanted to follow up on that particular point.
Ms. Middleholtz.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Certainly, Councillor Gordick, in reviewing when preparing the final document, there was a significant number of changes that we were doing. And in reviewing 8.12, you are correct. That was something that was discussed, and it was something that I actually did intend to include, but it appears as though I did forget to include that. So I'm going to, first of all, apologize to council. So what I would be proposing, 8.12 subsection A, the chair shall determine by order of hand raised and administer the speaking order for members of council. So if council would like to not raise your lovely yellow hands, but raise your flesh hands to signify if by consensus, if you're okay with that. Okay, thank you. All right, so that is an amendment. So Mayor Armstrong, when it comes time to I'm assuming pass the bylaw, it would be as amended.
Thank you for that,
Yes,
Ms.
ma'am.
Middleholtz.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the mayor. Councillor Gordick, that was one of my comments as well, was 812.8. So thank you, that's been taken care of there. One other thing, Ms. Middleholtz, was I was going back because, so actually, first of all, just any clarity, I want to provide clarity for people who are watching this, that there has been a lot of revisions that have come through this council to this. So first and foremost, I'm thankful for all of council and all of staff that we've arrived to this final document that I'm very proud of to be behind. I feel that it is an excellent document navigating us all forward through just forward. And it's taken a long time to get here, and I appreciate all of it. The one revision I went back to the previous, when we were still in council chambers and I made notes, was there was a document about that I had given Ms. Middleholtz on a form for petitions. And I'm just wondering if, while you're going through doing some housekeeping, maybe not necessarily with this document, but if you can flag that as making something that's easy for the public to just print off and have posted on the website, if that's a possibility.
Yes, through you, Mayor Armstrong. Yes, Councillor Holman, that is something that we have in-house talked about creating and all of that. My apologies for not getting it on the website yet, but we did have something drafted like to a final. It's more of an operational sort of thing, so no, it wouldn't be included as a attachment to this bylaw necessarily. As I said, it's more operational. That allows it to be a little bit more fluid and changeable. If it's part of the bylaw and is adopted as part of the bylaw, it's unchangeable, and I don't think that's what we want. So that's why I wouldn't
stand with
include
you
it
on
here.
that. Just wanted to link those two things together. That perhaps that would be just the timing is good with it.
It is. Yes.
The one other piece of feedback that I received from a couple of people in the Indigenous community while they were reviewing this was making sure that the land acknowledgement was also really accessible and easy to get. And it was only because they were reviewing it here that I'm bringing this comment up. So when you're doing some revisions to the website, is it possible to have that kind of easier to landmark?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So yes, certainly that is, I'll admit it's something I've kind of struggled with as to what is the best place to put that so that it is easily accessible and people can find it. So I need to take a little bit of time to find a creative solution to that. I would like to advise council and the public, though, which I think is exciting. I have just in the past couple of weeks received communications from 2, if not 3, members of the public who have requested to borrow our land acknowledgement and use it to incorporate onto their property. In one case, in another case, it was as part of their meetings and on their website. And it's in my mind that is a publicly usable document for people to. And I, from what we have experienced here in Wilmot, I have said to them to take it and make it your own, so that it has that genuine, heartfelt. There's an echo. I don't know where that's coming from, but and it's so that they can make it their own, and it has that meaning behind it that makes a land acknowledgement such a wonderful and impactful thing. So
You're making my heart sing. I so appreciate that, to hear that statement. The one final question that I have, thank you through the mayor, is so regarding the speaking time, with the 10 minutes versus the 5 minutes that was established before. There's a lot of concern in the community about that. I'm just hoping maybe you can just give some more extra clarity on that, and then just a bit of detail to explain the process. And I know Councillor Gordick had kind of addressed that as well, but just looking, I see Ms. Jackson just raised her hand, just looking to kind of unfold that a little bit more from staff's position.
Ms. Jackson?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hallman. It is a challenging change, and we certainly understand that as staff. The one reference that Councillor Gordick made earlier to the Prime Minister's Path meeting, I was watching quite carefully to see how the 5-minute time limit was working for folks, and most people didn't use the full 5 minutes. So I think that is a good sign. There were some great comments made that were very clear to understand their point and their perspective in those timeframes. But what I would like to indicate also, 2 things. One is that with that Prime Minister's Path meeting, one of the recommendations that was approved was to improve our public consultation process. And for significant topics where people have a lot of information to share, and there have been some of those recently, we will look more carefully at when a public information center is appropriate. And that will be part of the public consultation. And a public information center, for those of you who aren't aware of what that is, it might be held at a community center or another location outside of a council meeting where the general public can come. They might hear a presentation about a particular topic, and then they can speak to that topic, and council members can attend and listen and learn perspectives from the community. So I think that there's better mechanisms for people's voices to be heard than a 10-minute delegation at a council business meeting. So we will be looking at those types of things when we take a deeper dive into public consultation. But I think also, just to reference that, the clerk mentioned that folks can submit as much information as they need to. And I have been around many council tables, and I can assure the public that this council reads the information they receive. So I think it's a very valuable opportunity to teach, help council members learn perspectives in the community, to send information that's not just in a presentation the night of a meeting. So it's definitely a concern that's understandable, but I think that most people can get a really great message across in 5 minutes, and it allows for more people to speak as well.
A follow-up, Mayor? Thank you. Ms. Jackson, can you clarify for me, or maybe Ms. Middleholtz, if a delegation is steadfast set on the fact that they have that their presentation is going to take that much time? I know we had one delegation who had met their time last time, and they kind of had an extra, few moments to wrap that up. through the procedural bylaw, is there opportunity for us to just, the delegation to say, you know what, 5 minutes is just simply not enough? Can I get consensus of council to do 10 minutes? Is that an opportunity that we can look at if that's necessary?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. So with something along those lines, a delegation doesn't propose resolutions to council. That would be up to a member of the public to approach a member of council to make that resolution or make that recommendation on their behalf. As well, there is the authority of the chair. So what happened at the last meeting where there was a member of the public who, just had a couple of last comments just to kind of get through. That's one of those discretionary decisions of the chair for them to go through. One thing I would like to comment on, in information and legislative services, we stick to the bylaw. We try to make it understandable, but at the same time, where we have large groups of people coming to council, we will work with them to ensure that they're able to do what it is that they're trying to do, and still stay within the bylaw. So we're not breaking the rules, but we are helping them to navigate the rules to make sure that as many of them can speak for as long as they can, given the parameters within the bylaw, if that makes sense. So it's not like we're just saying, well, here's the bylaw, have at her. We're working with them, right? And we will always continue to do that. That's certainly, I can say that for as long as I'm in this chair, so.
I'll follow up. Thank you. That provides enough clarity for me to make my decision this evening. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can assure you that I'm not a mean bear here. I do have a bit of leniency in my bones, so. And, but sometimes there are people that may need to be cut off because they want to take advantage of something, but we try to be wisely judging their speech as to, if they have a few sentences left, that's fine. Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Any of the concerns that I had have already been addressed. And I just want to echo the thanks. I know this has been a long process, and I really appreciate both the incorporation of all of the asks that you've received from us, as well as the responses that you've provided to the community. I think that you've really done an excellent job of both clarifying and addressing concerns, and ensuring that we have a procedural bylaw that is an enabling and facilitating tool to help us to effectively conduct business while also hearing the community effectively. And I really look forward to working with all of you here to come up with more ways to engage with the community outside of the business portions of the meetings, and having more information and contact and connection publicly around big decisions that are being made. I think that's something that's really important, and our residents have certainly been asking for it. So I'm really looking forward to the next steps and really appreciate all the work that you've put into this one. So thank you.
Councillor Hallman.
Thank you. Sorry, through the mayor one more time. I just have one last thing. Ms. Jackson, can you just verify that the solicitor did review the document, just to make sure?
Through the mayor, thank you, Councillor Hallman. Yes, the solicitor took a very thorough review. I really like working with our solicitor. He is very helpful and he did a great job. And while I have the mic, I just want to give a huge thanks to Ms. Middleholtz. She did an excellent job on this bylaw. It's a difficult one. It's something that takes a lot of time, and she was extremely organized in making sure she got all of the input. So well done, Dawn. Thank you very much for that.
We certainly want to echo that. Staff have worked really hard, and I'm not sure if you can hear it, but I have to apologize for our train. We have that occur at this time every night. So anyway, no further questions. So there is a recommendation that report number ILS 2021-30 be endorsed as amended. Moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Gordick. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So the next item is the records retention, and that is being brought forth by the Deputy Clerk, Ms. Murray.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. I am beyond excited to introduce this report this evening. Records management is a vital component to accountable and transparent governance. As recognized in the 2020 updated strategic plan, responsible governance was identified as one of the 5 goals of importance to the council, staff, and residents of Wilmot. Records management captures the history of the corporation and tells our story of growth and change, as well as records our legislative compliance identified through various provincially mandated acts. Records are the memory of the corporation that will assist in making the decisions on the future of the corporation. Records management also protects the corporation from any liabilities. Properly documented permanent records, establishing a records retention schedule, and discarding of non-essential records also results in effective and efficient operations. Upon endorsement of the records management program, all staff will be trained in their service areas. The program is anticipated to take 2 to 3 years for full implementation across all township departments and facilities. This is a tried and true system that has been implemented successfully in many municipalities across Ontario, and staff are available should you have any questions.
Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Just one question about, we had just decided to support 80 by 50 climate action plan. So I noticed that E05, the air quality monitoring, and E17, energy management, and E19, renewable energy, have numbers of 5, 7, and 15. So I'm wondering if they should be extended further to reflect or record our progress with our commitment to 80 by 50. Just a question.
Councillor Fisher, could you repeat the section numbers again, please?
Sure. E05, E17, and E19.
Yep, I believe Ms. Murray is just looking them up to verify. In general, what has been presented as part of this, while she's looking that up, is that we have a we've been provided from Tom Rims the recommended retention schedule based on legislation, as well as other policy documents as to how we would keep that. That's not to say that it can't be changed. I would say increase, but we also have to look at if there's any potential downside to increasing that. This is one particular section I'm going to say that I don't have enough familiarity with. As Ms. Murray is looking it up, I'm not sure if she has anything further to add on that. But also perhaps somebody within our sustainability committee or perhaps Ms. Jackson who wishes to comment on that.
Through the mayor.
Yeah, Ms. Jackson, go ahead.
Thank you. I think that, and maybe Mr. Kelly can assist as well. Possibly he's works closely with that group, but I feel that all of the information that we'll be tracking through that program will be tracked regardless of the retention aspect. So I think that it's safe to say that even if this retention bylaw identifies those pieces, there will be additional tracking being done through the Sustainability Committee that will ensure that information is recorded, and it just may mean that we don't need to keep specific paperwork related to those aspects, but maybe Mr. Kelly can add to that.
Yeah, I can add, thank you, Ms. Jackson. I can just add, obviously Ashton kind of runs the show on that one now, and does a fantastic job. Yeah, as far as our carbon accounting pieces and tracking kind of GHG reductions, we do use a third-party application for that, a carbon accounting tool through Sustainable Waterloo Region. So all of our data and records with regards to that are tracked. In addition, anything through the payables side of thing as well tracks it with invoicing for all of our electricity usage, natural gas usage, and such. So I would say we're pretty covered through a records piece through other areas, but yeah, we'll definitely be sure to maintain a sufficient amount of information to tell the story of where we kind of once were from a carbon footprint standpoint and where we got to. So good catch though, Councillor Fisher.
Good enough.
Councillor Hallman.
Thank you to the mayor. This was quite an intense read. So I'm just thankful for the layers that went into that. And it's great to see that this is yet another item that's being brought up to speed in our community. So I'm just thankful for the obvious layers of work that went into it, because it was a time-consuming read. So if it took me that long, I can only imagine what it took to create it. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Ms. Middleholt.
So as Ms. Jackson so kindly pointed out with the procedural bylaw, I would now like to just take a moment to acknowledge the hard work of Ms. Murray, the deputy clerk, and what she has created for council's review this evening. It was a lot of hard work. Again, it's not saving turtles and birds, but it is the sort of thing that clerks and deputy clerks do truly love to do, and this was a passion project for her to take on, and I think that is evident in the product being presented here this night. So I'd like to take a moment to thank her and acknowledge her for what she has done.
Yes, very good. Thank you, Ms. Murray, for a job well done and for your enthusiasm in it. Thank you. So we have a recommendation that Council Bylaw 2021-37, a bylaw to provide a schedule of retention periods for the records of the Township of Wilmot, be approved, and to repeal bylaw number 92-54. That is moved by Councillor Gerber, seconded by Councillor Hallman. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next item is the development charges update study. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. So from turtles and birds to Don's exciting stuff, we move on to development charges, which are but this again, I'll say, as council is aware, a public meeting was held on May the 31st to solicit feedback on the proposed amendments to our DC bylaw. Prior to the public meeting and at the meeting itself, zero concerns or feedback were raised by the community, which is indicative of the quality and appropriateness of the proposed amendments. Following the public meeting, there was feedback received from the development community on a number of growth-related capital items that were previously not included within the amendment. Staff reviewed the feedback with our consultants from Watson and Associates and have incorporated a number of the items within the addendum that's attached to this report. Subject to the approval of the amending bylaw this evening, the rates would be adjusted from just over $23,000 to just over $24,000 per single family dwelling and would take effect on August the 31st, 2021. This addendum was posted to the township's website on July the 2nd and shared with key stakeholders, advising that the bylaw would be proposed for adoption this evening. No follow-up comments were received. Staff have been encouraged by the engagement and overall support of the development community and are pleased to present a bylaw update that truly meets the Development Charges Act goals of growth paying for growth. This bylaw represents a significant amount of effort and time from staff across the organization, but I personally want to thank Ms. Jackson, Mr. Molenhuis, Mr. Okrafka, and Chief Leeson for their support and input into bringing forward this important update. We look forward to approvals from council and implementing the necessary updates to the bylaw, and I'm happy to attend to any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Are there any questions? Councillor Fisher.
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Under 3.8 library services, so I noticed there are costs of $345,630 for library. Has there been any other communication with the region regarding service delivery review? Regarding library service.
Yeah, I can take a shot at it first, and then I'll maybe let Ms. Jackson jump in if she has any further updates. No, would be the short answer. As far as an update to the service delivery review pieces of it, I do know that the library services at the region were going through a significant planning exercise that I think got derailed a bit with COVID, but it sounds from what I've heard they're starting to get back on track with it. But as far as it impacts the DC study itself, there hasn't been any proposed costs or large capital that we've incorporated into this above the maximum threshold that we could reach. That's why that number of 348,000 is where it is, based on the 10-year service. But yeah, maybe Ms. Jackson might have some additional comments.
Yeah, through the mayor. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. We have another meeting, I believe, scheduled for mid-August, if I'm recalling correctly. So there has been limited discussion in the last few months since I've been in this position. So, but I do know that they are wanting to bring it back on track, and at a recent CAO's meeting, it was mentioned again. So there should be some updates, hopefully early fall, as to what direction things are going.
Yeah, and the next library committee meeting is on the 10th of August. So hopefully there'll be an update on that date for that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so the recommendation before us that the development charges background study prepared by Watson and Associates, Economists Limited, as amended, be approved, and further that council deems that no further public meeting is required, and that the 2021 development charges bylaw be approved with an effective date of August 31st, 2021. That is moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Fisher, all in favor. That is carried. Thank you. Next item is the Wilmot Waterloo Boundary Road Maintenance Agreement. Mr. Molenhuis.
Thank you, Mayor Armstrong. This report is recommending the execution of an agreement with the City of Waterloo for maintenance and capital works on the portion of Wilmot line shared between Wilmot and Waterloo. As reported previously to council, staff are working through boundary road agreements with all of our bordering municipalities to formalize the working relationships that we have. With this agreement today, the township will be responsible for year-round maintenance duties of Wilmot line with cost recovery of 50% of the works completed. The agreement has a cost recovery mechanism in place for regular maintenance, for capital maintenance, and for capital upgrades. Capital maintenance would include replacing existing surfaces like for like, and would include pre-approval of cost sharing within a certain spending limit. Capital upgrades are slightly different in that they would include actual upgrades to road surface types and would require obviously further approvals from both councils before proceeding. One thing to note is there is a clause in this agreement that includes timing, a window for the study to look at surface material upgrades on the portion of Wilmot line that is currently gravel and within the environmentally sensitive landscape. And that study would certainly look at considerations to transportation and environmental factors when it does proceed. The city approved the execution of this agreement at their June 28th meeting. With the change in operations service this winter, staff will be moving forward with the support of contracted services to ensure the maintenance obligations that we will be taking on meet the minimum maintenance standards. The service requirements will be evaluated over the next few years, and staff will certainly bring forward any recommendations on staff complement or equipment utilization needs in the future. Council may recall in previous budget years that staff were asked to move the Wilmot line forward in the 10-year capital plan in an effort to working towards a solution for that stretch of road. This agreement begins to address this item. It is expected that further detailed discussions will need to take place with city staff on scope, on cost, and on timing of the study. And all of this will certainly be presented at a later date in the future budget process for ourselves and also for the city. The recommendation before you is to execute this maintenance agreement with the city. I would like to thank our interim CAO, Ms. Jackson, for her support and leadership in getting us this far along in the stage, or at least to the final steps towards the recommendation here tonight. And I'd be happy to answer any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Councillor Gordick.
Through Mayor Armstrong to Mr. Millhouse. I know that we had talked about the study. That study will take into account the Haldeman track with regards to the present petition and being brought forward with the moratorium on Haldeman track development. I believe that we had a conversation. I just wanted the public to sort of have a bit of an update on that we do consult as a matter of going forward with the Indigenous communities for development, potential development and study work. And this would also be looking at trying to do as little damage to the ESL. Is that correct? Is that what the sort of the main goal of working with the study with the city?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Certainly with any environmental assessment, we do have obligations to consult with various community members, stakeholders, as well as Indigenous communities. So obviously with the proceeding of an environmental assessment, we would certainly be consulting with the communities that we would need to. In terms of what the outcome may be, or in terms of what we would do in the process of the outcome, certainly with an EA, we look at different alternatives and different options, and we take in a variety of comments on each. And we evaluate those through the report process. There's obviously an extensive amount of work that goes to support environmental assessments. So it could be as as deep as traffic impact studies. It could be as deep as environmental impact studies, and looking at all the options to see what sort of impacts each option may have on those particular areas. And then certainly making a recommendation to council at the end of the study. So there certainly is a lot of public process that flows out of our EAs, and there are a multitude of options we usually consider and look at what impacts each might have in various different sections. So to answer your question, absolutely, that we would be looking to move forward with a study that would take that into consideration, and that's our intention moving forward with city staff as well to move that item forward.
Councillor Fanning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Something I think that a lot of viewers aren't really fully aware of is when we're talking about an environmental assessment, what the word environment means. And a lot of people assume that it means well, the natural environment, but an environmental assessment, and obviously the director can explain this a heck of a lot better than I can. So perhaps if you could just clarify for the viewing public, just what we're talking about and what we're looking at when we do an environmental assessment.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. An environmental assessment is a more or less a report and a study and a report that looks at different options of potential upgrades, or we'll say impacts of potential upgrades. And in this particular case, if we were looking to upgrade the road surface, we'll say for Wilmot Line, it is not a regulated process, but the Municipal Engineers Association has a very outlined process for these types of activities. And so what the study more or less looks at is, like I mentioned before, there's a few different options we consider if we want to look at different road materials, or we want to look at things like traffic calming, if we want to look at different options that we may be able to look at for that road. And then what we do is we evaluate those in different technical areas, we'll say, or environmental areas or financial areas, to give them sort of a score in terms of impacts to each of those particular units. All of that is, presented to the public, and it's something that everyone has an opportunity to come see all the information that gets put forward. And there's, like I said before, there's certainly a lot of studies that go behind our EAs. It could be as far as cultural heritage as well, and it could be some of those impacts that in each of our different projects that we could evaluate. And all of that, like I said, is a very public process that information is available to the public. But more or less, it's a prescribed process, a prescribed reporting process that does come back to council once the public consultation is done, and we make a recommendation based on the feedback we get, based on what our consultant, who runs a bunch of sub-consultants as well in evaluating information, and making their own recommendations for a plan to move forward. So following that, then there is a public notice period. So it sits on a record for 30 days, and then there's opportunities for the public to comment again. So again, it's a very, we'll say, structured process, and it deals a lot with the public, and it deals a lot with particular areas of what you would expect in a wide range of infrastructure. So in this case, we're talking about a road, but we have these types of studies for any of the infrastructure that we would plan to make changes to, substantial changes to. So.
Thank you. Councillor Gordick.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a little bit of a follow-up. Unfortunately, my camera and my audio went, so I didn't get to hear all of Mr. Mullenhouse, but I did want to sort of ask the question, kind of going back a little bit with regards to the Haldeman track component of Wilmot Line. Would part of that, when you mentioned about studies incorporating some of the township's goals and sustainability options, would that also include using our arts and culture master plan with regards to the township line and some of the heritage and culture within that actual area of would that be used as some of the documentation to go forward with the EA?
Through you, Mayor Armstrong. One thing to clarify, and just in terms of moving forward with the study, a lot of the scope that we would have to consider, we have to sit down with the City of Waterloo and talk through, what we see as the appropriate scope. I can tell you that on any of our current environmental assessments, if there is, we'll say, a cultural or a heritage impact, we are dealing with our committees here, circulating them for information. So what you will find on, we'll say, Bridge Street coming forward, what we dealt with on Holland Mills, we did deal with our committees here at the township, and proposed our solutions and met with them, circulated them for comment. So they are integrated into the process, and they certainly are able to have a voice in the process as well.
Thank you for that.
I see no further questions. So the recommendation is that council approve and enter into an agreement with the City of Waterloo for the maintenance, repair, and capital services for Wilmot line, and further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the attached boundary road agreement between the city of Waterloo and the Township of Wilmot. That is moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Fisher. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So the next report is from Development Services. And that is DS 2021-023, and it has been recommended that it be deferred to allow for review and feedback from the aggregate industry and the general public. Is there a member of council who would like to move it be deferred or to move it as is? Councillor Fenning? Are you moving to be deferred?
I will move for it to be deferred. Thank you.
Okay, and you were seconding that, Councillor Gerber?
Yes, that's correct. I will second the deferral.
Thank you. Are there any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So the next are correspondence. And we have a recommendation that correspondence item number 13.1 and 13.2 be received for information. That is moved by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Councillor Gordick. No questions or comments. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next, we have bylaws recommendation that bylaw numbers 2021-36, 2021-37, and 2021-38 be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed in open council. That is moved by Councillor Gordick, Councillor Fenning. All in favor? That is carried. As amended. All these amendments. Anyway. Are there any notice of motions? Seeing none. Announcements? Start with Councillor Fenning.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Armstrong. Next week, July 18 to 24 is National Drowning Prevention Week. And, you know, we're a community that has a lot of water. We have a river running through. Over 400 Canadians die in preventable water-related incidents annually. Even one drowning is too many. There have been many heartbroken families just in this past year alone. We hear about it in the news. There are a lot of ways to prevent drowning. Supervising children, boating safety, learning to swim and learning to survive, preparing ourselves to be around water and be safe while we're doing it. Stay sober in, on, and around the water. And open water safety. Make smart choices before going in, on, or around the water. And be water smart all year. You can save a life, yours and someone else's. Take a learn to swim, life-saving, or first aid class today. And my comments that I'm making tonight are coming from the Life Saving Society website. There's lots of information out there, and As I've said before, we have phenomenal staff at Wilmot Township that would be happy to help you up your water safety game and learn to be safer around the water so we can all have fun and a safe summer and be safe as we're having fun on the water.
Thank you, Councillor Fenning. That's very important. I know at GRCA, they have a lot of concerns about that because, like you say, people aren't paying attention. They need to be more aware of where they're doing, what they're doing, and what the fact that they're near water. Councillor Hallman.
Thank you, through the mayor. I just want to plead to everyone, as a small business owner myself, and as the Ontario finds itself at the leaving or in phase 2 this week, and hopefully joining phase 3 with the rest of the province, to still support local. So many local businesses are still dealing with increased costs that they've never seen before due to pandemic cleaning associated fees and spacing out their businesses. So when you're thinking of buying birthday presents and planning for the winter season ahead, do your part and trying to keep us little bitty businesses still going and thriving. So, and thank you to everyone who's done that.
Thank you. Councillor Gordick.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Hopefully I won't lose connection again. My apologies, everyone. I just have 2 announcements really quickly. This Thursday, July 15th, Warren Bechtold will be collecting donations to raise money to fight childhood cancer. The event will replace Warren's usual barbecue and silent auction fundraiser. Last year, he raised an astonishing $22,000 in just a few hours. This is the 17th year for Warren's annual fundraiser, and the community is truly grateful for his dedication and hard work. Thank you to Warren, his company Bechtold Home Improvements, and the Optimist Club of Petersburg. Donations will be collected on Thursday from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. outside of Bechtold Home Improvements at 1239 Notre Dame Drive in Petersburg. And my second announcement comes from the TCP. They're going to be presenting 5 in-person shows between August the 5th and the 15th in New Hamburg. They will begin setup of their theater beginning July 31st. They were wondering if anybody in the community is available to help with setup, usher, or other various jobs. And if so, they would like for people to contact them at, production manager at thecommunityplayers.com. That email address will be available through our clerk. I sent that to her earlier. They do a great show, and hopefully we can get a lot of volunteers and helpers for this year's productions. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say that hopefully people will get out, get their shots, because that's what makes stage 3 more plausible and easier to get to. And hopefully people will do that, because by Friday we can hit stage 3. And I'm so looking forward to a haircut. Yeah, and the clinics that they had at Binghamton's went very well. We've had reports, people showed up and they were in and out in about 30 minutes with the hockey club method and everything. So it's going rather well, and they walk-ins and at the clinics and stuff. So make sure everybody gets out and gets it done, because that's what's driving us towards stage 3. And my haircut. So. And that's it. So that we have a confirmatory bylaw recommendation, that bylaw number 2021-39 to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on July 12, 2021. Be introduced, ready first, second, and third time, and finally passed in open council. And that is moved by Councillor Fenning, Councillor Hallman. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And now the final recommendation that we do now adjourn to meet again at the call of the mayor. Moved by Councillor Gerber, Councillor Fisher. All in favor? That is carried. So now you have time off until August. So you guys behave yourselves.
Have a good night, everyone.